Of course, we are back to black as we know it on the mainstream media, but we're streaming live on social media as well. Hit us on Twitter, AM Live NTV is the Twitter handle. Also, our Facebook profile is AM Live NTV, where you can actually be streaming and seeing the latest that we have here for you on AM Live. Remember, today is Wednesday, and every Wednesday we have Standing on Guard, and where we look keenly at matter security with our panelists. And allow me to introduce our panelists this morning. We have Professor Noami Damba, who's the Vice Chancellor of KC University, also an expert on defense and foreign policy. Also, we have the Executive Director of Amnesty International Kenya, that is Houghton Irungo. And we do have also with us the Chairman of the South Sudan Young Leaders Forum, that is Peter Biara Jack, who's joining us this morning, eagerly waiting also for Dr. Mustafa to join us much later in the course of the program. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us. And let's just begin with you, Houghton. Looking at the development yesterday, first of all, what did you take from, early in the morning, with the way people also came out in force at Uhuru Park to actually observe this particular occasion of swearing in Raila Odinga as the people's president? So what did you take later also when media right now, we are off air when it comes to the traditional media, but of course we are live on the social media as well. In terms of human rights, because you are a stalwart and defender of human rights as well, as enshrined in the Constitution.
I mean, I think, first of all, we need to ask, what was the Communications Authority of Kenya thinking yesterday? I mean, it's completely bizarre. They committed at least 2 constitutional violations. I think in some ways, it's unfathomable that they thought that this would help the country in any way. I mean, we all moved immediately to online options. I'm sure in the villages across the country, people were asking, hii kitu inaitwa VPN, hii ni nini? So people immediately moved to virtual private networks, and we all went on to Twitter and to Facebook and YouTube. So we saw what needed to be seen. And I think for me, the question really is, whether the media houses, particularly Nation and Citizen, whether they should immediately, collectively institute a public interest suit to make sure that this never happens again. So that's my first reaction in terms of what happened yesterday. I think we can also be happy that the crowds that we saw at Uhuru Park essentially met. There was no violence. The police restrained themselves, as is required by the law. There was no violence from the protesters. We saw a few tear gas incidents, but really, to be honest, given the nature of the event, the right to peacefully assemble was expressed yesterday, and I think that's a positive development, both in terms of NASA's management of that event, but also in terms of the police. So I think for me there were a couple of things that I think as a country we need to learn. The last one really is that, unfortunately, I think for the political class, we are still in this game called chicken, or blink,
yes,
or matatu, where 2 matatus hurtle at each other, and the driver say, wacha huyu mwingine atatoka, and we go right to the brink and hope that somebody has the common sense to move back. And unfortunately, we're still in that space of brinkmanship.
Yes. So in your own also estimation, do you think there was a violation of the Constitution by the media houses?
Yeah, I mean, we can quote them if I'm not a lawyer, but Articles 34, 35, 47. 47 is the one that relates to fair administrative justice. And it's very clear that the Communications Authority violated that one as well. But the right to information, the freedom of the press, the right to peaceful assembly, all of these were violated.
Access to information as well.
Access to information.
Right, let's say from Professor Noami Damba.
Debarl and my colleagues here, these are extraordinary times which require sober and thoughtful, extraordinary thinking. What happened yesterday will, of course, go in the annal history of the country as a major eventful day. One is I would like to congratulate the government for the restraint of not bringing uniform security people and tear gas alongside this situation. It was a wise move, and it allowed for event to take care of itself, and also restraint on the side of the NASA team that carefully plan or organize the event without using words that could easily have evolved into unthinkable situation for the city of Nairobi and for the people of this area. Honorable Odinga has elevated himself. I have always called, and we have always called, for the President and Honorable Odinga to meet together and chart course for our country. But he has carefully chosen to place himself in the history by what he did yesterday. It was a sea and peaceful sea of people, mostly young people, that gathered at Uhuru Park. But the most important thing that Kenya must remember is listen to their words. Listen to the words of those young people. People with no hope, people who feel neglected, and people who must be part of this country in order for us to move as a country. Way forward, it cannot be business as usual. The government need to check itself very carefully, and the NASA team need to check themselves carefully. The president must reach out to the NASA team in order to bring a coalition together that will help our country. There must be restraint, continuous restraint on all sides. And the centerfold is the sanctity of human life. A national uniform voice must be found.
Thank you.
Which bring together aligned forces
Right.
that can bring this country
Right.
toward a peaceful resolution.
Right. Let's just listen in also to what Peter Biara Jack has to say this morning as well.
Well, thank you, Debarl. I must say yesterday was quite an interesting time. And as my two colleagues said, it's quite a momentous event that cannot be ignored. And I think the big takeaway for me is the extent to which the division among people of Kenya is reaching. And I think this should be a concern to all responsible authorities in this country. If you read your preamble, there is a section that says, proud of our ethnic, cultural, and religious diversity, and determined to live in peace and unity as one indivisible sovereign nation. And I think I must encourage people in Kenya, especially the political class. It's not just a game of power. You are dealing with lives of people. You are dealing with the lives of your children, of the future generations of Kenyans. And I think this is something that must be taken very seriously. There is a serious divide. Your politics in this country has always been along ethnic lines. And because of that, this is undermining your ability to unite as a people under shared norms and shared values. And what we saw yesterday is that those divisions are reaching extra levels. And it requires careful reflection on the side of Kenyan authorities. I must congratulate the government of Kenya for the restraint that it did, especially allowing that peaceful event to occur without interruption. I was worried when I heard initially that the government intended to suppress the event. That would have been a disaster for this country. And that would have inched this country closer to the kind of scenes that you are seeing in my own country in South Sudan,
Yes.
where political elites are focusing so much about holding on to power, about their own narratives, instead of being aware of the collective narrative as people of Kenya. At the same time also, the opposition, by very carefully charting the law, I think it's going to be very difficult really to take this to court and say that some law has been violated, because Raila Odinga did not declare himself the president of the Republic of Kenya. He declared himself people's president. You can create any sort of crazy titles that you want to create for yourself. As far as I'm concerned, reading the Constitution of Kenya, you're allowed to do. But the way they did it was to make a political statement. And President Uhuru has to be aware. That was a lot of people. That could have easily been 1 million people.
Yes.
And those are young people, and those are the future of this country. And if they are feeling that they are disenfranchised, that their votes have no meaning, this is the beginning of chaos coming to your country. And those of us in the region look at Kenya as a beacon of hope. So we want Kenya to get its act together. We want the political class of Kenya to sit down and address this. You did this before. 2007 was a much darker time, 2007, 2008. But President Kibaki showed leadership. And it's the same thing that is expected of President Uhuru Kenyatta.
To show leadership. Let's hear from Dr. Mustafa. Good morning.
Thanks, Debarl. 2 points. 30th of January goes down in the history of the opposition politics in this country as a momentous day. The crowds, the numbers, especially of the young people that gathered at Uhuru Park is testimony that Raila Odinga has clout. And that this clout should be translated into an opposition that then has some ideology. That then Raila, what he has to do if he's really going to help this country from where he is to raise the bar of politicking in this country. For a very long time, we've had political parties that have no ideologies. They are driven by personality. They're based on personality cults, including both the ruling party and NASA coalition itself. It's about time that Raila now translates that into something that is going to help this country moving forward. The second point, Debarl, here is that with regard to security, yesterday, whoever decided, or the decision to withdraw the police from Uhuru Park was a security masterstroke. That helped. We saw that the people were peaceful, except for a few who were roaming around the streets here, trying to tear down some stuff in the city center. The people there were largely peaceful, and that the decision not to interfere, the decision not to stop the activity by opposition was a good thing to do. Anybody can swear himself in for whatever purpose. And so it's okay for people to express their frustrations and issues in the manner that they are, provided they are not breaking the law. Moving forward, Debarl, it's very important that we have national conversations in this country. Conversations that are going to address issues of inclusion, exclusion, real or perceived marginalization. The youth in this country, who are the biggest either beneficiaries or are going to lose out from the kind of politicking that we seems to be having in this country. It's time that we have national conversations.
Time that we have a national conversation. Right, but of course also looking forward with the NASA, the entirety of NASA right now, as far as yesterday was concerned, with the no-show of some of the principals, including Musalia Mudavadi, Kalonzo Musyoka, and also as well as, who else is this? Kalonzo Musyoka, Musalia Mudavadi, and Wetangula as well. We have Kalonzo, and we've just played that clip. I want you just to comment on that, because it seems also Kalonzo says that, you know, they were actually secluded at some place, and they were prevented actually, or he was prevented to come for this particular occasion. Let's just listen in a bit.
Well, wasikilizaji, najua kwamba kuna hali ya taharuki kwa sababu ya yale yalitokea. Mwenzangu Mheshimiwa Raila Odinga alienda akapatiwa kiapo Uhuru Park, na mimi kama mgombea mwenza sikuweza kufika kwa sababu ambazo sasa zinaeleweka. Jana usiku tulipokutana, Mheshimiwa Raila alionelea ni vizuri yeye asilale kwake, na mimi nikaona ni lazima nilale nyumbani. Tukapanga hivyo. Lakini asubuhi nadhani wengi wameona kwa runinga vile askari ambao ni walinzi hapa walikuja kuchukuliwa mapema zaidi. Wakachukuliwa wale wako hapa Nairobi, wakachukuliwa wale wako huko nyumbani Sekuru. Ilikuwa ni kama tisho, na hata wale askari ambao kawaida wanao kwa gari wakachukuliwa jana, wakaambiwa kila mtu akionekana hivi ataachishwa kazi, atafutwa kazi. Kwa hivyo nilikuwa mimi peke yangu, na nikakaa hadi saa 5 hivi, na ndio waandishi wa habari wakaja. Na lakini nilipotoka hivi kukawa basi tulikuwa tumepigiana simu tukutane na Raila na Wetangula na Mudavadi tuelewane vile tunaenda Uhuru Park. lakini hatukufika. Sisi, mimi na Wetangula na Mudavadi, kwa sababu hatukuwa na bodyguard, tukajipata kwamba tumezuiliwa kwa chumba kimoja, na hayo ndio ambayo ilifanyika. Kwa kifupi, mimi niko tayari, vile ndugu Raila alisema, wakati unaofaa tukikubaliana tuende tupate kiapo, ili wananchi wajue sisi sio watu wa kurudi nyuma, sisi ni watu ambao kuna msimamo. Kwa sasa naomba tu ambao wanaendesha mambo ya mitandao wawache kutoa matamshi ambayo yanaweza kudhuru uhusiano wa NASA, kwani sisi principles wanne tuko imara na tuko kitu kimoja.
All right. These are, of course, what is on the front pages of the dailies today. We begin also with the Star. Look at the Star. It says that Kalonzo was in hiding. This is what is on the front page of the Star as Raila takes oath. And also, I can put up also the Daily Nation for you. It says that Blow has also Kalonzo skips Raila's oath. So was Kalonzo in hiding? This flies in the face of what he says, that he was restrained, Houghton. So we've had Dr. Mustafa saying that this was a masterstroke, what the government did yesterday, you know, restraining themselves and not showing up, boots on the ground at Uhuru Park. That was good. But on the other hand, they were restraining some of the principals. Is that the case?
I mean, to be honest, it's difficult to tell what happens. I take
from just what you had.
I take Kalonzo's comment at his in good faith that there was a degree of personal safety that they were having to deal with in terms of the principals or the leaders of NASA. I think the concerns were probably legitimate, because I think for many of us we thought there was going to be heavy-handedness in terms of the police.
Yes.
Whereas I think we can congratulate the government. I think we need to recognize that that actually is the responsibility of a government, which is to allow constitutional freedoms and rights to be exercised.
Yes.
And I think they acted well yesterday within the constitution and within the laws of the country.
Mm-hmm.
I think the bigger question really is whether the strategy that kind of has now ended up in this point where we now have Raila Odinga as the people's president, whether that is whether that's a long-term strategy and what unfolds next.
Yes.
So there is some talk now that the next area of focus will be on announcing a cabinet. And then I presume there will be cabinet meetings, and I presume that there will be ministries. And so my concern is that for NASA, one of the things that may be a bit dangerous is actually to create the illusion that they are running a country, with the exception of the county governments that they control. Mm-hmm. And I think this comes back to this question of the national conversation. What we need to see as Kenyans, we need to see NASA being able to demonstrate higher levels of governance, performance, delivery of services, a more open, inclusive environment in the county governments in the counties that they manage. And I think that's where the attention needs to be, rather than creating another layer of government that it's not clear what instruments of power do you exercise. The second thing I think is really around this issue of, I think you talked about this hopelessness among 40 to 60% of our youth, that they have no jobs, they live in settlements in which there are not proper dignified services, they are at the risk of being shot by police officers. I think that's the bigger agenda. And I think if there were four things that NASA and Jubilee should be thinking about at this time, these would be the four. Electoral reforms. Yes. Security sector reforms. We need to look at the economy. The economy currently reproduces 10% of the population who have 40% of the wealth. Yes. The rest of the country, I guess the bottom 10%, survive on 2% of our national wealth. That is an unsustainable model to run any country, not much less one of ours, which is an emerging democracy. And I think the last thing that really I would be urging those political advisors and those policy advisors would be to think about how do we bring the legacies of historical injustices to a close? Because much of this is fermenting in a moment like this, and it will not be dealt with parallel national administrations, particularly if they do not have power to execute and to allocate public resources to deal with these problems. But the counties do have that, and that's where I think NASA needs to focus right now on their role within these tens of counties that they control.
Right. Let's continue, gentlemen, with this. I think we were on you before we took a short break. What does this portend for this country right now? As I mentioned, We have the people's president as well. Even in the United States today, so there's a people's State of the Union that actually they were protesting as well. So it seems it is enshrined in the Constitution. There was really nothing, not really enshrined in the Constitution, or there was no violation of the Constitution as we've established. And I can see also a lot of reactions on Twitter as well as to some of the comments that you were saying. I'll read some of them much later. But let's continue. Or how do you just finish your thought on that?
I think I'll allow the others
let's hear from Professor Nomidamba.
Debarl, I would not spend time and energy to figure out whether the Musalia, Kalonzo, and Wetangula are together with Raila. That is their issue. I will take them at their words for what happened yesterday. But earlier morning, I listened to Kalonzo, who called for peaceful gathering, and who asked for restraint, and who asked the young people not to throw stones, but wear white clothes, that they were all peaceful. And so that sent a very powerful message to me and to the nation, and a timely message. But here's my point. The time has come up that the president must line up the leadership and forces to deal with the issues that are impacting this country. I think there has been a number of people appointed, rightly so, in the cabinet. But these folks who have been appointed must be aware of what is on the ground.
Yes.
What's on the ground is 60% of the people in Kenya are youth, and 6% of them are uncertain about the future. And so we must provide solution. I think people need to be very cautious on how we engage the youth in the country and what we say to them. Yesterday, for instance, I closed the university, and I asked that everyone stay at home, both faculty, staff, and students, but engage with each other such that we need to know instantly what happened to any one of us. And therefore, leadership, whether it is at the community level, at the high school, primary school, a higher education academy, the politician together, everyone has to take leadership about this. And it is not one person responsibility.
Right. Okay, let's say from Peter Biara Jack, what does it portend for this country? Not really commenting on Kalonzo or the missing principles as well, but yes, we have, you mentioned the way they came out in force at Uhuru Park. This epitomizes that, yes, we have a very youthful, demographic here that we need to actually take keen interest on as we're moving forward, because this is actually a tinderbox waiting to explode if they are not addressed, the issue of unemployment, the issue of being marginalized as well.
And I hope this becomes the focus of President Uhuru Kenyatta, because this is his last term. He has already been sworn in as the President of the Republic. I don't see the elections and his swearing in being annulled again. So he has his last 5 years in office. And he should really think about what kind of legacy he's going to leave behind. How is he going to leave Kenya from the time in which he took over from Kenya? I think he took over at a time when Kenya has just had a new constitution. There was a lot of excitement about the future. You finally had a devolution and ability of different counties to govern themselves. But now, where is that vision of Kenya going? As we speak, the TV stations are offline. The Minister of the Interior is declaring the massive political movement in the country as a criminal organization. What is kind of future is Uhuru going to leave? And of course, you have the serious wealth inequality in the country. You have a problem of security. You have people losing faith in their country and in their ability to unite as one people. So the question really is, what kind of Kenya is Uhuru Kenyatta going to leave behind? He has a legacy to protect, and of course he's building also on the legacy of his father. So I hope personally that he takes this seriously. And on that issue of legacy, it also is important for the rest of the opposition leaders to think about their own legacy. What kind of legacy are they leaving behind? I used to have a lot of respect for Kalonzo Musyoka when he was a foreign minister. It's largely through his efforts when he was foreign minister that peace was realized in South Sudan. But since the 2007 elections, he has got himself this image as someone who doesn't really have a backbone. And he shifts from one position to another. He doesn't really take any meaningful position. And the issue here is, if you are trying to defend the democratic gains that this country has made since the end of one-party system in the early 1990s, then it requires leaders to take that extra step of putting themselves really and literally on the lines, on the firing lines.
All right.
And I was surprised that he was missing yesterday.
You're surprised that he was missing yesterday. And of course, this is not really a political show, but we cannot, we'll be remiss if we don't really talk about the events of yesterday, him not really showing up. This is what also Victor has drawn in the Star today. Kalonzo, that as always, the way he has been personified as the watermelon. Yeah, here he is again, and they say, my no-show at the swearing-in was a result of Jubilee withdrawing my security and the media blackout. Right, and of course we had that particular statement from him as well. A very flimsy excuse, but you know, him being a no-show yesterday, what does it mean? Has he put his political life right in the middle of a chopping block?
I don't think, honestly, I don't think Kalonzo has any real...
Because this reinforces what you're really saying, that he is very, he flip-flops, he's very wishy-washy in terms of his, allegiance as well.
Yeah, no, I think that is the image that, whether it's by design or by accident, but by the kind of decision that he has made over time, that is the image that he has certainly cultivated for himself, at least since 2007. He appears to be very opportunistic. He doesn't really have any real stand on many things. So he can blame the security details, but if you are going to be that leader that is fighting for freedom of others, that is trying to restore hope to your people, you have to take certain risk.
Even if
all of us, we
even
have
if
to
he's
take
taking
risk.
a border to show up for
Yes.
this very pivotal.
Yes, let him take
event.
a border and let him show up in a border. That will even send a greater message.
Yes.
But I don't think he has the backbone to do that.
So you don't think he really has a cheek to do this? Let's hear from Dr. Mustafa.
Well, I don't wish to comment on Kalonzo Musyoka's absence at Uhuru Park. But let me say this, that revolutions, if at all political leaders are saying that they want to have a revolution in this country, revolutions are not led by people who have state security. Revolutions are not led by people who must be driven to the grounds where the revolution is going to take place. Revolutions are driven by courageous leaders with the young people behind them.
Yes.
We now need to move forward in this country. And as I said, back to my point earlier, the young people. And I know we are not on free-to-air, but allow me to address the young people directly, if on the streaming and on Twitter. It is time now that you young people look at politics in this country very differently. Not in the manner that we have been herded together like sheep, going to the slaughterhouse by political, or rather ethnic, tribal entrepreneurs. Because all we have in this country, most of the political leaders we have in these countries, including those who are leading parties, are basically ethnic entrepreneurs. Well, the elections are done and over. Let us look at 2022 and start organizing ourselves. That's what Barack Obama did. We should not depend on handouts so that we can then elect whoever has the most money. And that's how we continue to mess this country. That's how we continue to mess ourselves in this country. It is we, the youth, that are paying the price. And it is up to us, it is up to the young people, that as we move towards 2022, let us change the political terrain and politicking that we have in this country. Those leaders that purport to be standing by us are not. In actual fact, we have seen in the way that the political appointments are done in Parliament, right to the Legislative Assembly in Arusha, a lot of nepotism. I have issues with some of those people that have been appointed recently, and we must change this country. It is up to you young people to do so by sending a very strong message that 2022 politics is not going to be the same again in this country.
All right, thank you very much. Let's just read some of the tweets that we have here from some of the Twitterati that Yes, they are watching this morning. Just read some of them. We have we have someone saying, "Oh, Guru, this is Chep Sangon." Ronald is saying, "Blackout on my TV, no NTV at Go TV Kenya yet. I paid for." We have also Jack Jagero saying, "Media is the eye opener of uneducated, and the war on it must stop." We have also Michael Gitonga saying, "Funny dudes that they still don't know they are off air, but putting a brave face to the wind." Yeah, it's just so cool, smacking us this morning, yeah, in the face with a particular comment. Also, we do have Aviator. Well, let me just read another one. I think that's a longer one. The truth is, the editors and owners in this Kenya media are more political than the politicians themselves, I think you wanted to say. Baba is a president. Can't he give an immediate order for your signal to be back if he is a president? That is what Roberto is asking. Also, we have Michael Kunania saying, "Why congratulate a government for taking an action that's spelled out in law? Isn't it obvious?" And I think this is, goes to Dr. Mustafa, who was saying this was a masterstroke. I mean, that was, as Michael is saying, why should you congratulate? I mean, that is their work, actually, to take take an action that is spelled out in the law as well. We have also Dennis Nkunja saying there will be no coalition governments. It's even more dangerous. We have also Chamo Tiles Kamoni. What kind of media house is this that support wanton breach of the constitution in a sham and an illegal swearing in? He asks. You wanted a bloodbath to happen for content, isn't it? That is what Chamon is asking. And also John Gidanga, Kenya is at a tipping point. He says it is a make or break time. We as a nation are ripe for transformation, but this is solely dependent on leadership. Solely dependent on leadership. He goes on to say it's time for our leaders to stand up and be counted for courageously leading the fight against tribalism, corruption, and impunity. And also we have Kennedy Omogi saying leaders reign in the masses' hearts, not on motorcades and state offices. And also Samuel Orutu was saying the government should not hide behind the misuse of its power to undermine NASA in stopping the agenda. The truth is the opposition has the support they can't ignore. Let them come out and find a lasting solution for the country. The more their restrictions, the worse. That's what he's saying. Those are some of your comments. I can see, Peter, you wanted to comment on?
Yeah,
No,
the decision by, I want to believe that this is the work of Matiang'i and other folks in the security agency. There is no need to, stop this kind of political gatherings. Mm-hmm. In the past, we've seen that the default has been that this kind of gatherings are met with tear gas, rungus, and brute force that is unnecessary. It is, I think, the first time in a long time that we are seeing huge crowds gathering peacefully without police interference, and that everything went on peacefully. And so we have to congratulate and ask the government that in future this is the way to go.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think I agree with Mustafa. I think that takes care of the management of the rally yesterday. But I think the other issue that's been raised, first of all, just to go back to one of the people who tweeted and said we are brave people because we're in the studio at 6 o'clock now, 7 o'clock in the morning, but nobody's watching. I assume he's watching, and I know my family are watching, so at least there are a few people. So I think it's also an act of solidarity that we continue to access this information. So I thought about this morning: does it make sense when many people in the country will not be watching this morning? Does it make sense for me to come on television? I said no. As an act of solidarity, yes, we will continue to come because that is what our constitution provides for us. The second thing is this. I think one of the Twitterati also raises an interesting point. Mm-hmm. Should consumers, independently of the media houses, also take the Communications Authority to court? Mm. Because they have been denied their basic right, yes, to information. Secondly, there are people who pay monthly subscriptions and fees for services, yes, that have been interrupted. We're now going into 24 hours, mm-hmm, since the shutdown happened. Why isn't there a class action suit? Are there a couple of lawyers out there? And I don't know if Omutata is watching or Apollo Mboya. These are two individuals who have, I
Or
think,
he's
begun...
been restrained.
Oh, he's being restrained. But I don't think Omutata is restrainable, to be honest. The man is infallible, I think they say, you know. So I think for the lawyers out there, you know, why don't they get a group of citizens together and take the CA, you know, to court and just make sure this doesn't happen again. It just does not happen again. It is highly dangerous. I think the last time I remember something like this was in 2008.
Yes.
And I think it was Minister, let's see, who was it then? I'm trying to remember.
Mishuki.
It was Mishuki, just after the elections.
Yes.
And he ordered that, a blackout. And the country went into turmoil because everybody started imagining what could be happening. And the thing about the right to information, it allows people to be able to make their own judgments about what's going on. But if you remove that capacity, you leave now space for gossip, innuendos, exaggerations, and that's what propels the potential for violence.
Right. And you rightly say that because also we remember when there was that interface of switching off from the analog to the digital.
Migration, yeah.
Also, there was a blackout for almost 2 weeks.
Right.
And we know the upshot of that. We lost you know, so many jobs. People were actually sent home because of this. So in a government that is really trying also to say that we want to employ more people, are they exacerbating, you know, the situation by trying, you know, to switch off some of these, you know, stations? If in light you want to really preserve jobs because you want to create jobs, yet now you want also to make sure, again, that people are losing jobs as well.
Debarl, in the age, or in the digital age, one is kidding themselves by attempting to block out information. Because young people, 70% of young people aged 35 and under have access to internet. They have access to international network. And therefore, you will not block them out. But like my friend here is saying, this creates opportunities for rumor mongering. One here, the other way, pass it down to another. It does not help. It does not help the country, and it does not help the government imagery at this time. There are two things that is very, very clear at the bar. One is corruption, and the other one is tribalism. Corruption has been taken on a continental wide by AU.
Right.
You all watch Nigeria president.
We will discuss that.
Yeah, being acknowledged.
Yeah, we'll delve into that.
But unless these few people who've been appointed be seen and really commit themselves to reading themselves out of corruption and tribalism,
yes,
then we are just wasting our time. And the president must commit himself to firing these people based on their delivery.
Right, thank you very much. Let's just wrap up on it, unless you have other lingering comments that you want to say, Mustafa and Dr. Berajak, very briefly.
The only thing I want to say, there is a gentleman that mentioned in the Twitter feed
Yes.
that what this is going to require is leadership. And I think that is the point that I want to hammer on.
Yes.
You have to understand that your country is increasingly getting divided. The conversation remains civil, but this division along ethnic lines is quite dangerous. And it's also kind of like related also to economic marginalization. And the more this continue, it will only be bad news for Kenya. So what is required now is for the political leadership of this country to demonstrate that leadership, and also for all other Kenyans. You can't leave it to politicians. You have the same politicians that have been there for the last 15 years. Why are younger Kenyans not stepping up and able to provide the leadership that their political leaders are not providing? There's nothing whatsoever stopping them. And even us in South Sudan, who are experiencing all sorts of difficulties, we as young people now are organizing. And through the South Sudan Young Leaders Forum, we are able to come together and articulate a new vision of what country we want. What is preventing young Kenyans from doing that? They need to do that and move away from this tribal politics that is based just on tribal alliances and no ideology or vision whatsoever.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Mustafa, very briefly.
Yeah, just to pick on from where Peter said in terms of why the question, why are young people not taking up leadership in this country, and precisely because that space is suffocated. It is suffocated by elderly leaders who have decided to to act like political warlords and not giving that space to nurturing younger talent. And leadership by young people is not going to just be given to the younger generation. They will have to take it. They will have to take it. And they will have to tell the leaders that are there today who have lined up themselves for 2022. And this is very strange, by the way. Kenya is the only country that lines up leaders ahead of time, instead of leaders coming to present their policies and all that. And young people are just going there to listen like sheep. We have to get out of that mentality. We have to question them. In fact, we have to reject them outright, upfront, even before the elections, the previous elections are done, so that they don't have this feeling that it is up to them, that they can mobilize tribes for them to take up leadership. And these tribal calculations that we have in this country is going to sink us. And it's going to sink us because it's going to increase corruption.
Right. So, well, the issue that now people are saying we should, as we're winding up, we should have a national dialogue, because we've been caught up in this vortex of tribalism that is, it's so tangled up, and we cannot really see people through, you know, clear eyes, but, you know, through tribal tinted eyes, that if he's not my leader, or even the cabinet, you had some of the leaders really complaining it's not our community that has been, of course, been appointed. Why are we marginalized on this? Then how can we break out of this? Because it seems that even with the advent of devolution, we've so entrenched tribalism that yes, even the hirings here in this particular county has to be 70%, you know, the locals first. But that was not the spirit of devolution as well. Very briefly, as we're winding up on this.
I mean, I think the first thing is to just recognize that, you know, there aren't several constitutions. The constitution is not a calendar that we somehow looked at, put up on our walls in 2010, then took it down and put up another one in 2011. It is actually a national guiding instrument for how we chose, many of us, over 60% of us chose this country to be governed. Devolution was primarily set up not to entrench ethnicity. It was set up to entrench service delivery at a local level and local democracies. And the idea was that we would be able to, through the assemblies and through the public participation clauses, be able to govern ourselves in smaller units, and that would allow for democracy to emerge. Now, obviously, there are some things that have worked, there are some things that have not worked, but I think what would be important going forward is really for the leadership, and I think, you know, Mustafa has been very clear about young people to begin to demand higher levels of service and higher levels of leadership from all of us, including those of us who are not elected leaders, but nevertheless are providing public, you know, kind of public service, or we're acting in the public interest. And I think that's where we need to do. We need to focus a lot more. I mean, today we're basically 4 men in a studio, hopefully watched not just by men, but also watched by many women out there. And I think the other side of this conversation is really thinking about how do we, create space and support for women leaders to emerge, and to support those women leaders that are emerging, to provide new forms of leadership that are more consensual, that are more caring and more compassionate, and also are thinking about justice in a different way. So those figures of 10%, 40% economies and so on, when you look at it in terms of women, it actually is a much more complicated picture. And you know, my heart broke when I saw, when I heard the story at Kenyatta National Hospital, and I thought, you know, how is it possible in 2018 that places of care are also places of captivity in terms of arresting people who cannot pay their bills, or they're places where women can be raped? And I think, you know, going forward, those are substantive issues that need to be brought into the national conversation.
Thank you.